I said, if I understand you correctly about metta rules and pratyahara, does this mean we do not take the sutras to have a literal meaning necessarily? I'm not very clear on this and the comparison with Patanjali and his pratyaharas.
Okay, the sutras...
In other words, how important are these rules of grammar to understanding the Yoga Sutra?
Oh, I think that they're very important. I mean, if for no other reason, that when you think that the guy that is writing this, his thing, the driving passion in his life is speech, and he is the master of it. He doesn't even have a lower half of his body. It's the coils of a snake, right, below his waist. Right? This is a man that is totally concerned with speech and language, and now he writes this incredibly terse set of 195 very short sutras, shorter than our English sentences, half the size of the average English sentence in a book. Now, how are these to be interpreted? And the only way that these are really going to be interpreted is by people who understand these meta rules and this meta language and this use of phonetics and phonetic roots in order to create a world. So it becomes vitally important. And the other thing is this, is that we know by our common speech with our friends and family and so forth, that there are elements in our speech that may relate to films, music, stories from childhood. We might say, oh, she had a real Cinderella life. Okay. Now imagine going 2,000 years in the future and coming up with some of these expressions and jargon that relate to stories and films and music, and try and make any sense out of it. And then on the other hand, we have a convention in Sanskrit that is very important in looking at the Yoga Sutras, which is called samasa, which is compound words. The concept that we use in modern linguistics today of compound words comes from Panini and Patanjali, and there are forms of compound words that are very interesting, such as what I believe, if my memory serves me well, is called a karmadarya samasa, a karmadarya compound. And an example of a karmadarya compound, for those of you at least who know American history, is that when Paul Revere went on his famous ride to warn all the colonialists that the British soldiers were coming, he said, the redcoats are coming. Now, he wasn't talking about coats, even whether they were red or white or black. He wasn't saying the coats were coming, and he wasn't saying that coats that were colored red are coming. He's talking about people. And that the people that were coming had a very particular historical and cultural and political circumstance that they were coming in. And yet, if we just took the Oxford English Dictionary and the English language grammar, and we tried to understand what the hell Paul Revere meant when he said that redcoats were coming, we would have a great deal of difficulty without an on-the-spot commentator. So this is exactly what happens in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras is that he will say something and we think we have a general meaning, but if we want to really understand what that meaning is, then we must be able to access in some way the commentators on Patanjali through the texts, or if one is lucky enough to have an oral tradition where there's a continuity of commentary and of comment on these statements. This is the first approach that we really must have, and if we're going to arrive at a meaningful interpretation, then we're going to have to employ some of these aspects of commentary in order to reach that place. And Volker's asking another question. He's saying, one more question, Babaji. As today, yoga is a misinterpreted word in today's New Age spiritual movement, and everybody uses it as an added brand. My question is, previous to the composition of the Yoga Sutras, was yoga the title to any other tradition before him? Yes, in fact, yoga does go back considerably before Patanjali. Hiranyagarbha is a name that has been associated with yoga that goes back 1,000 years or more before Patanjali. And yoga is a common word that is used in not just the field of speech and consciousness, but in astronomy and astrology and Ayurveda, in a number of different areas, and it is coming from this sense of connecting and connection. So the modern use of the word yoga to be synonymous with physical culture is it's the modern commercial world of markets and brands and so forth. But what is very curious, and we can discuss this next week when we take apart the 8 limbs, the Ashtanga Yoga of Patanjali, and we look at the very first of the 8 limbs, which is called Yam, which you could think of as restriction or the playing field, and the description of Yam by Patanjali himself, as well as several of his commentators, puts this focus on 2 major aspects. The most important is truth. That there must be a commitment to truth. Why? This is not a moral issue. It's not that you should be truthful. Yes, I chopped down the cherry tree. No, it's got nothing to do with that. Yes, of course, you should tell the truth. This is strategic. If you want to find the truth, if you want to find the truth of yourself, if you want to find the knowledge of yourself, then you have to operate within a world of truth. If anything goes, then what you find out in the end also is anything goes. So truth is absolutely essential. And then the second thing is ahimsa, nonviolence. And I'm not talking about not stepping on insects. And by the way, there's a story of Patanjali. One of the reasons why he asked Lord Shiva to give him the lower half of the body of a snake is because he didn't want to step on any insects. And snakes don't step on insects because they slither. But really, the ahimsa, the nonviolence of Patanjali, goes much further than not stepping on insects or killing mosquitoes. A number of you have heard me use this expression, epistemic violence. To do violence to an episteme. An episteme is an element, a basic element of knowledge in the same way that a phoneme is a basic element of articulation. To commit violence on the object of your study will change that object so that it's no longer what you were studying. And if you learn the truth of an episteme that you have changed, where's the value? So the two primary aspects of Patanjali's very first limb, Anga, of the 8 limbs, the Ashta Anga, is yam, which we think of as the playing field, and most importantly, that there must be truth strategically, and there must be nonviolence. These are not prescriptions, these are descriptions. And you must remember that in all of this material of Patanjali and Panini, these are not prescriptive texts. They're not telling you what to do. They're describing things. Panini's case, he's describing speech, which is meta-language. The description of speech is meta-language. And then it has its application. And then Patanjali is coming along and he is describing how through the medium of speech the seer, as it were, connects with his consciousness, with the consciousness that is the seeing itself, rather than the seen, the apparent world, the illusion of the world, and as we can discuss next week, the construction of the world.